Look, Isabel pointed to a house coming up below them. Is that a little girl? Where? Jessie asked. There. What's she doing out all by herself at this time of the morning? Jessie saw her standing in the snow in the middle of a large field. A house and a single wide mobile home sat together far up the hill, the only homes Jessie could see for miles around. Krampus dropped down to tree level, and the girl looked up at them as they flew over. Jessie thought she couldn't be older than 6 or 7. Krampus, Isabel said, and clutched his arm. Please land. Vernon leaned forward. If we're putting this to a vote, count me against. Krampus didn't appear to want to either. He'd been silent since discovering the strip mining, but he grunted and put the sleigh down between the girl and the house. The girl watched them land, watched them climb out and walk down the slope toward her. She didn't run, didn't look scared at all, not even particularly surprised to see them. She wore a ragged flannel jacket, much too large for her, with the hem of her nightgown poking out below. Her legs were bare to the cold from the knees down, and Jessie realized she had only socks on her feet. She looked far too thin, shivering, dark circles under her eyes, her hair greasy and matted to her skull. She held a shovel, the tool looking huge in her small hands. Jessie could see a patch in the snow where she'd been trying to dig up the frozen earth. Isabel bent down, took her hand. Why, you're freezing. When's the last time you had something to eat? The little girl wiped her nose across the back of her arm and looked up at Krampus. Are you Satan? No, I am not. I am Krampus, the Yule Lord. And who might you be? Have you come to take my daddy to hell? Krampus shook his head. No, child. Why do you speak so? She didn't answer. She turned and headed up the hill, dragging that big shovel behind her. She left the shovel against the side of the house, climbed the steps to the porch, onto the porch, and disappeared into the house. They're cooking, Chet said, pointing to a generator and several portable propane tanks sitting just outside the basement window. Cooking? Isabel said. Meth, Jessie said. She still didn't appear to get it. Drugs, Jessie added. Bad drugs. Jessie looked the place over, didn't like what he saw. The field appeared not to have been tended in years. Fall's corn all dried up and still in the husks. Large sections of vinyl siding had fallen off the house, lying in twisted heaps upon the ground, exposing the tar paper and weathered plywood beneath plastic sheets and tarps. Oh my gosh. Large sections of vinyl siding had fallen off the house, lying in twisted heaps upon the ground, exposing the tar paper and weathered plywood beneath. Plastic sheets and tarps were duct taped over the windows, and several had come loose and were flapping in the light wind. An overgrowth of dead weeds and blackberry vines from previous seasons had pushed up against the house and tangled along the porch. The mobile home was set off from the house about 20 yards. The blocks on one side had given way, and the trailer leaned to port like a listing ship, darkness peeking back at them through the broken window panes. The place gave off a bad vibe, more than just neglect, something foul and vile. Jessie couldn't remember ever feeling anything quite like it. He wondered if it had anything to do with his heightened senses, with Krampus's blood running through his veins. Regardless, he didn't particularly wish to go up there. He glanced over at Krampus and could see the Yule Lord felt it too. Looks like it's been a long spell since anyone gave much of a damn around here, Jessie said. Tweakers, Chet said, and spat. Meth, crank, probably huffing too. You know, whatever they can get their hands on. Bet my ass on it. Now there's a prize no one wants to win, Jessie said. Chet's face soured. Being a dickhead just comes naturally to you, don't it? Someone needs to go see about that little girl, Isabel said. We don't need to be going up there, Chet said. Ain't nothing good waiting up there. Folks that's cooking is dangerous. Folks that's using is dangerous. Folks doing both are about as much fun to be around as nitroglycerin. Isabel didn't wait around to hear it more. She headed up the slope on her own. They watched her climb the porch and enter the house. I'm telling you, Chet said, we got no business up there. Krampus let out a sigh. It appears my little lion feels otherwise. He started up after her. Come. A dog crawled out from under the porch as they approached, shaking and skittish. Jessie could count every rib. Krampus rubbed his head, and it wagged its tail. They skirted around the scorched recliner and a pile of burnt blankets and mounted the steps. The front door stood half open, the house dark. Krampus entered as they all followed. Jessie noticed he wasn't the only one on edge. Both he and Vernon clutched the sleeping sand, and the Shawnee had slipped out their knives. The dim morning glow filtered through the dingy shades, giving just enough light to see that the front room had caught fire at some point, leaving the paneling and most of the ceiling burnt and blackened. The smell of damp, charred wood hung in the air. A man lay on the sofa against a far wall, half covered in a blanket, his eyes heavy and bleary. With twitching hands, he scratched absently at the sores dotting his face, didn't seem to even notice the pack of Yule demons staring at him. Krampus stepped over, poked the man once in the ribs. The man looked up at the Yule Lord, seemed to focus on him for an instant. The man's face twisted into a mask of terror. He moaned, rolled over, and pressed his face into the sofa. This is a tweaker? Krampus asked. He has a sickness? Chet nodded. Yeah, he's got a sickness, all right. Addicted to crystal meth. Craves it. You know, has to have it or he goes batshit crazy. I understand addiction. It is like those who are enslaved to the opium. Yeah, like that, except worse. These folks, they make this shit out of whatever chemicals they can get a hold of. They don't eat, don't sleep, and it slowly chews away at their brains. This plague, it is prevalent throughout the land? Yeah, Jessie put in. Thanks to douchebags like Chet here, it sure as shit is. What the fuck, Jessie? Chet barked. Your hands ain't exactly clean. Krampus shook his head, left the man on the sofa, and continued to the kitchen. Jessie flipped the light switch, but the light didn't come on. In the dim morning glow, they could see someone had removed all the doors from the cabinets. That there was nothing left on the shelves but a few packets of instant oatmeal and a box of Fruit Loops. The place smelled of mildew, of meat gone rancid. Dozens of plastic garbage bags lined the far wall, some toppled over, spilling out their contents. Others had holes chewed in them where the rats had been to work. Stacks of unwashed dishes and pans cluttered the sink, counters, and stovetop. Fuck, Chet said, holding his nose. How do people live in this filth? Jessie peered down the hall, searched for Isabel. The house was quiet, eerily quiet. He felt as though he were in a spook house. Sure, some horror was about to jump out at him from every shadow. A clang came from somewhere, possibly the basement, difficult to tell. Oh, good Lord, someone said. It sounded like Isabel. Jessie made his way down the dark corridor, trying not to trip over all the trash. He found Isabel and the girl in the back room. A man lay tangled in a sheet upon a bare mattress, staring up at the ceiling. His waxy skin and sunken eyes left no doubt that he was dead, long dead. Well, now that's a shame, Chet said over Jessie's shoulder. Looks like Boone County's got one less dumb shit ice head to hand food stamps out to. Isabel spun around, set angry eyes on Chet. Shut your foul mouth, she hissed. This is your daddy you're talking about. Chet flinched, looked at the little girl, didn't realize. Hell, sorry. Her name's Lucy. Her name's Lacey. The little girl didn't turn around, didn't even seem to hear, just stood there staring at the dead man. Isabel bent down and pulled the sheet up over his head. Krampus and the others stood at the door. No one spoke. She says he's been dead a long while, Isabel said. Maybe 4 or 5 days. That's what she was doing out there in the cold, trying to dig a grave for her daddy on account of no one else would. This one, Krampus asked, pointing at the corpse. The sickness? The meth? Chet nodded. Yeah. Body can take only so much, you know. Probably enough chemicals in his veins that they wouldn't even bother embalming with the embalming juice. Isabel took the little girl's hand. We need to get her someplace warm. Get her something to eat. You planning on just taking someone's kid? Chet asked. You sure you want to be doing that? She looked at Krampus. I ain't leaving her here. Krampus nodded absently, his face unreadable, staring at the body. Isabel kneeled down next to the girl. You want to come along with me? Get something to eat? The girl wiped her nose and nodded. Well, that's all I need, Isabel said, and led Lacey through the Belsnickles and out into the hall. The Belsnickles stood unsure, watching Krampus, waiting for his next move. A shrill cry cut the silence. Who the fuck are you? Jessie pushed out of the room, saw a silhouette back toward the kitchen wall, blocking Isabel's path. A woman, gaunt, with long stringy hair. Looking as close to death as a living person could, stood in front of the open basement door. She reeked of chemicals. What are you doing here? She spotted Lacey. What are you doing with my little girl? What the fuck are you doing? You get away from her, you hear me? Isabel let go of Lacey, grabbed the woman, and shoved her into the wall, clutching her by the jaw, twisted her face, and forced her to look at her little girl. Look at her. Look! Your little girl is starving to death. She's got no shoes on. She's so cold she can't stop shivering. What kind of mother are you? Tell me, huh? The woman blinked, her eyes filled with pain and horror. It was as though she was seeing her daughter clearly for the first time in a long while, and Jessie guessed she probably was. Isabel let her go, and she slid down to her knees. Oh, sweetie, the woman's voice broke. She began to sob. I'm so sorry. Let's get you something to eat. She reached for the little girl with a bony hand that looked more like a claw. Come on, Mama's gonna fix you a grilled cheese. Come on, Shug. The little girl backed away, tried to hide behind Isabel. The woman's brow furrowed, her voice became taut. Sweetie, come here, now. The little girl shook her head and stayed put. The woman began to tremble, her face twisting into something miserable and grotesque. She saw Krampus, got a better look at the Belsnickles. Her eyes began to twitch, her lips to quiver. Demons, she whispered. Someone has let the demons into my house. She stood, jabbed a finger at them, and shrieked, Devils! Oh, God, save us! Come here, baby, don't let them touch you. She leapt forward, catching Isabel by surprise, shoving her backward. Isabel stumbled and fell over a clump of trash. The little girl tried to run, but the woman caught a handful of her hair, yanked her around, started to drag her away. Jessie dashed forward, caught the woman by the arm. Vernon was ready. He rushed up and dashed a pinch of sleeping sand directly in her face. The woman let out a shout, wiped at her eyes, losing hold of the child. Isabel gained her feet, snatched Lacey up, and hustled her down the hall, disappearing into the kitchen. The woman had stopped struggling for a moment, looked confused, sneezed, blinked, then caught sight of them again. Devils, she screamed, and began slapping and clawing at Jessie. Vernon tossed more sand into her mouth and nose. She stumbled back, spitting and wiping her face, sneezed again, and sat down hard on her ass. Even so, she still held on to consciousness, glaring at them as they passed. Damn, Vernon said. Did you see that? A whole handful, and she's still kicking. It's the crank, Chet said. She's so jacked up, nothing's going to knock her out. They left the woman in the hall, passed through the kitchen, and into the front room. The man, whoever he was, had not left the sofa. He had the blanket pulled up to his nose, his haunted eyes following them as they exited the house. They tromped down off the porch and rounded the house, caught up with Isabel in the yard. Isabel pulled the panda cap off her own head and tugged it down over Lacey's. The little girl sobbed, pressed her face into Isabel's shoulder. Isabel turned as they approached, and all at once her eyes grew wide. She let out a cry, and Jessie caught sight of Lacey's mother. She came running up behind them, seemed to appear out of nowhere. She clutched a shotgun, and her eyes meant business. Before anyone could move, do more than shout, she leveled the weapon at Krampus and pulled the trigger. The blast deafening at such close quarters, echoing up and down the valley. The buckshot caught Krampus across the back of his left shoulder, spinning the Yule Lord around and knocking him to the ground. The kick hammered the woman back a step. She straightened up and slid the action, ejecting the spent shell and loading a fresh one. She brought the barrel to bear, aiming at Krampus's head. Devil! She shrieked, Makwa threw himself between the muzzle and Krampus. Another deafening boom, and Makwa's chest opened up in a spray of blood and flesh. The big Shawnee hit the ground hard, tumbled to Krampus's feet. Krampus moved then, faster than Jesse thought possible. Before the woman could get another shell chambered, he was at her. He let loose a thunderous roar, and swung. An upward thrust of his claws caught the woman in the lower bowels, ripping her wide open and flipping her completely over. She slammed into the side of the house, spattering blood and gore across the vinyl siding. She landed in a heap, one leg twisted behind her back. She looked at the great wound running up her midsection, at the steam rising from her exposed entrails. She raised a hand and pointed at Krampus, tried to say something but couldn't. Her arm fell, her eyes frozen on the Yule Lord. Isabel covered the little girl's eyes, picked her up, and walked quickly down the hill toward the sleigh. Krampus stood, glaring at the dead woman, eyes aflame, chest heaving, great gusts of breath billowing from his nose and mouth in the winter air, his tail snapping back and forth. He stepped towards her, clenching and unclenching his clawed fingers as though about to tear her body to pieces, oblivious to the blood trickling down his back from the wounds peppering his shoulder. Makwa let out a weak moan and coughed, spat out a mouthful of blood. Krampus stopped, his eyes found the big Shawnee, and the fire left him, replaced by a profound sadness. "No," he whispered. Krampus came to Makwa, dropped to both knees. He stared at the terrible wound across the man's chest, at the spreading pool of red melting into the snow. Makwa struggled to draw breath, taking in big gulps of air. A thin wheezing sound coming from his chest. Krampus clasped the man's hand between both of his, looked him directly in the eye. "Makwa, my bravest warrior." His words were earnest and measured. "The Great Spirits call. It's time for you to go to them, to be honored for your loyalty and bravery. Miche Moneto has gathered all your great fathers, and they all await you with a magnificent feast. Go to them with your chin held high. Take your rightful place." Makwa's eyes focused on something beyond Krampus. He nodded and smiled. "I see them, Lord Krampus." Tears streamed down his cheeks. "They come. I see." He said no more, his eyes frozen on the heavens. The big Shawnee's eyes slowly changed from orange to dark brown. The wind kicked up, a flurry of dry snow and corn husks spinning around them and then drifting away across the field, disappearing into the forests. Krampus smiled. Makwa rides with his great fathers. He slipped his arm beneath the big man, lifted him as though he weighed nothing, climbed to his feet, and headed to the sleigh. Isabella waited, the girl in her lap, her face pressed into Isabel's shoulder, crying quietly. The Belsnickles took their places, and Krampus handed the body off to Whippy and Nippy. Krampus climbed aboard, gently popped the reins, and the goats tugged the sleigh into the air. It began to snow again, but no one spoke as they drifted silently over the hills and hollows back toward Good Hope.